Tir Yast. Tir is the leader of the stars against the planets, as stars and planets belong respectively to the worlds of Ahura Mazda and Engra Ma'inu. That attribution probably got put on because of the Yazidi astrology, usually based on a system of 7. Like most of their stuff, usually based on 7, but there's the whole 9 thing and all that. This Yast is a description of the production of the rain through the agency of the star Tir. It has to struggle against the da'ava of drought. Apa'asha is first overcome, and it conquers at last. This seems to be a rethacamento of the old storm myths, which has been insofar renewed as the role of the hero in the original myth has been transferred to a star. It is to be noticed, however, that Apa'asha is not described as a planet. Tir is Sirius. It presides over the first month of summer, the 21st of June to the 21st of July. And remember, in probably most cultures, the bright quarter was summer, not the solstice to equinox. But this Yast appears to have been written in a part of Iran where the dog days must have fallen in July, and the rainy season began in the last days of July, unless the place of Tir and the calendar has been changed at some later period. This Yast is recited on the days of Tir, Ha'urvatat as the genius of the waters, Farvardin as the Hervashis are his allies in the struggle, and Bad, the wind. The struggle between Tir and Apa'asha is described in the Bundahis 7, but it has there a cosmological character. It has not for its object the annual and regular return of the rains after the dog days, but the production of the seas and lakes in the first ages of the world. Stivantem, pondering on what good is to be done. Vikar yavantem, karyan yanam, and zaire mia vantem, har itavar navantem, kila prithvi, sar drataram karate. And that's Sanskrit in regards to note verse 5 of the moon Yast, the freshness giving. And the wealth giving is referred to as Kasta Vantem, Lakshmi Vantam. And the wisdom giving is Varikan Vantem Danak. And finally, in that verse, the prosperity giving, Zaire Mia Vantem, Harita Varna Vantem, Kila. Oh, okay. I shared that, didn't I? Prosperity giving is Vo Va Vantem. And the note on the Tir Sirius, we're seeing Eva da Astera Pra Pantone Oyan Sulaka Ka'e Pra Tan Egg Cat S Tahse Tan. Sirion, and that's mentioned in Potars. And now we move on to the actual Tir Yast itself. I thought I'd make sure that those notes are finished. 0. May Ahura Mazda be rejoiced, and so on. Hashem Mohu, holiness is the best of all good, and so on. I confess myself a worshipper of Mazda, a follower of Zarathustra, one who hates the Devas and obeys the laws of Ahura. For sacrifice, prayer, propitiation, and glorification unto Havan, the holy and master holiness, and so on. Unto Tisturia, the bright and glorious star, and unto the powerful Satavasa, made by Mazda, who pushes waters forward. Be propitiation with sacrifice, prayer, propitiation, and glorification. Yata ahu va'erio. The will of the Lord is the law of holiness. And I guess we're using the regular numbers here. Remember some of the ones that we talked about. So the first part is 1 through 3. 1. Ahura Mazda spake unto Spitama Zarathustra, saying, We worship the lordship and mastership of Tisturia, whereby he protects the moon, the dwelling, the food. When my glorious stars come along and impart their gifts to men, I will sacrifice unto the star Tisturia that gives the fields their share of waters. 2. We offer up libations unto Tisturia, the bright and glorious star that gives happy dwelling and good dwelling, the white shining, seen afar and piercing, the health-bringing, loud snorting, and high and piercing from afar with its shining, undefiled rays, and unto the waters of the wide sea, Van Guhe of wide renown, and the species of the bull, made by Mazda, the awful kingly glory, and the fervasha of the holy Spitama Zarathustra. 3. For his brightness and glory I will offer up unto him a sacrifice worth being heard, namely unto the star Tisturia. Unto Tisturia, the bright and glorious star, we offer up the libations, the ha'ama and meat, the barisma, the wisdom of the tongue, the holy spells, the speech, the deeds, the libations, and the rightly spoken words. Yanhe, Hatam, all those beings of whom Ahura Mazda, and so on. And remember this word worship here, the communication of the divine with that. It's not that God's praying to whatever. And in Arabic we have the same thing. People, who aren't Muslim, like to play games. That's, and I don't know if they're playing games, but because certainly certain things were treated as gods, like the being of this or that or the other. But I mean, the later tradition, we see certain things happening. 2 is just verse 4. We sacrifice unto Tisturia, the bright and glorious star, who is the seed of the waters, powerful, tall, and strong, whose light goes afar, powerful and highly working, through whom the brightness and the seed of the waters come from the high upon the pot. I don't know if this is supposed to be, for his brightness and glory, I will offer him a sacrifice worth being heard, and so on. Part 3 only has verse 5. We sacrifice unto Tisturia, the bright and glorious star, for whom long flocks and herds and men, looking forward for him, and deceived in their hope. When shall we see him rise up, the bright and glorious star Tisturia? When will the springs run with waves as thick as a horse's size, and still thicker, or will they never come? For his brightness and glory, I will offer him a sacrifice worth being heard, and so on. 4. 6. We sacrifice unto Tisturia, the bright and glorious star, who flies towards the sea, Va'uru Kasha, as swiftly as the arrow darted through the heavenly space, which Ereksha, the swift archer. Is that linked to a particular... Is that a different understanding of something else that the Persians mentioned? Very similar name. I'm trying to think of something. The swift archer, the Arya amongst the Aryas, whose arrow was the swiftest, shot from Mount Gacha'atha to Mount Havanvant. 7. For Ahura Mazda gave him assistance, so did the waters and the plants, and Mithra, the Lord of wide pastures, open a wide way unto him. For his brightness and glory, I will offer him a sacrifice worth being heard. So 6 and 7 there. Part 5, 8 and 9. 8. We sacrifice unto Tisturia, the bright and glorious star, that afflicts the Pa-Ericus, that vexes the Pa-Ericus, who, in the shape of worm stars, flies between the earth and the heavens, in the sea of Urukasha, the powerful sea, the large-sized deep sea of salt waters. He goes to its lake, in the shape of a horse, in a holy shape, and down there he makes the waters boil over, and the winds flow above powerfully all around. Some of this, some of the language is a little bit more open than we may initially realize, but there's like a mystical experience, stargates, and it's known to the ancient Egyptians and some other cultures. And yeah, it's like there's these round burrows full of colors and streaks of and weird sounds, and you're like in a different place. And the means of doing such is by knowing the stars, a certain star on the horizon, particularly a heliacal star, a heliacal rising star, and so the worm star thing. But some stars actually have, so there's references in some of these myths of stuff that's like interesting and modernly appropriate in reference to some of these. It's like black stars. Who sees a black star without a telescope? And these black stars absorb other stars. That's 9. Then Sata Vaesa makes those waters flow down to the 7 Krishvaras of the earth, and when he has arrived down there, he stands, beautiful, spreading ease and joy on the fertile countries, thinking in himself, how shall the countries of the Aryas grow fertile? For his brightness and glory I will offer him a sacrifice worth being heard. Part 6 compromises 10 through 34. 10. We sacrifice unto Tisturia, the bright and glorious star, who spake unto Ahura Mazda, saying, Ahura Mazda, most beneficent spirit, maker of the material world, thou holy one. 11. If men would worship me with a sacrifice in which I were invoked by my own name, as they worship the other Yasts with sacrifices in which they are invoked by their own names, then I should have to come to the faithful at the appointed time. I should have to come in the appointed time of my beautiful, immortal life. Should it be 1 night, or 2 nights, or 50, or 100 nights? 12. We sacrifice unto Tisturia. We sacrifice unto the reigns of Tisturia. We sacrifice unto the first star. We sacrifice unto the reigns of the first star. I will sacrifice unto the stars Hapto Iringa, to oppose the Yasts and the Pa-Ericus. We sacrifice unto Venant, the star made by Mazda, for the well-shapen strength, for the victory made by Ahura, the crushing ascendant, for the destruction of what distresses us, for the destruction of what persecutes us. We sacrifice unto Tisturia, whose eyesight is sound. 13. For 10 nights, O Spitma Zarathustra, Tisturia, the bright and glorious star, mingles his shape with light, moving in the shape of a man of 15 years of age, bright with clear eyes, tall, full of strength, strong and clever. 14. He is active as the first man was. He goes on with the strength of the first man. He has the virility of the first man. 15. Here he calls for people to assemble. Here he asks, saying, Who now will offer me the libations with the ha'ama and the holy meat? To whom shall I give wealth of male children, a troop of male children, and the purification of his own soul? Now I ought to receive sacrifice and prayer in the material world by the law of excellent holiness. 16. The next 10 nights, Ospitima Zarathustra, the bright and glorious Tisturia, mingles his shape with light, moving in the shape of a golden horned bull. 17. Here he calls for the people to assemble. Here he acts, saying, Who now will offer me the libations with the ha'ama and the holy meat? To whom shall I give wealth of oxen, a herd of oxen, and the purification of his own soul? Now I ought to receive sacrifice and prayer in the material world by the law of excellent holiness. 18. The next 10 nights, Ospitima Zarathustra, the bright and glorious Tisturia, mingles his shape with light, moving in the shape of a white beautiful horse with golden ears and a golden caparison. 19. Here he calls for people to assemble. Here he acts, saying, Who now will offer me the libations with the ha'ama and the holy meat? To whom shall I give wealth of horses, a troop of horses, and purification of his own soul? Now I ought to receive sacrifice and prayer in the material world by the law of excellent holiness. 20. Then Ospitima Zarathustra, the bright and glorious Tisturia, goes down to the sea of Vaurukasha in the shape of a white, beautiful horse with golden ears and a golden caparison. 21. But there rushes down to meet him the Da'ava Apa'asha in the shape of a dark horse, black with black ears, black with a black back, black with a black tail, stamped with brands of terror. 22. They meet together, hoof against hoof, Ospitima Zarathustra, the bright and glorious Tisturia, and the Da'ava Apa'asha. They fight together, Ospitima Zarathustra, for 3 days and 3 nights, and then the Da'ava Apa'asha proves stronger than the bright and glorious Tisturia. He overcomes him. 23. And Tisturia flees from the sea of Vaurukasha as far as Ahathra's length. He cries out in woe and distress. The bright and glorious Tisturia, woe is me, O Ahura Mazda, I am in distress, O waters and plants, O fate and thou, law of the worshippers of Mazda. Men do not worship me with the sacrifice in which I am invoked by my own name, as they worship the other Yasts with sacrifices in which they are invoked by their own names. 24. If men had worshipped me with a sacrifice in which I had been invoked by my own name, as they worship other Yasts with sacrifices in which they are invoked by their own names, I should have taken to me the sacrifice of the strength of 10 horses, the strength of 10 camels, the strength of 10 bulls, the strength of 10 mountains, the strength of 10 rivers. 25. Then I, Ahura Mazda, offer up to the bright and glorious Tisturia a sacrifice in which he is invoked by his own name, and I bring him the strength of 10 horses, the strength of 10 camels, the strength of 10 bulls, the strength of 10 mountains, the strength of 10 rivers. 26. Then Ospitima Zarathustra, the bright and glorious Tisturia, goes down to the sea of Urukasha in the shape of a white beautiful horse with golden ears and golden caparison. 27. But there rushes down to meet him the Da'ava Apa'asha in the shape of a dark horse, black with black ears, black with a black back, black with a black tail stamped with brands of terror. 28. They meet together, hoof against hoof, Ospitima Zarathustra, the bright and glorious Tisturia, and the Da'ava Apa'asha. They fight together, O Zarathustra, till the time of noon. They don't mean the hour, they mean, midday, right? Then the bright and glorious Tisturia proves stronger than the Da'ava Apa'asha. He overcomes him. 29. Then he goes down from the sea of Urukasha as far as Ahathra's length. Hail, cries the bright and glorious Tisturia, hail unto me. O Ahura Mazda, hail unto you. O waters and plants, hail. O law of the worshippers of Mazda, hail. Will it be unto you, O lands, the life of the waters will flow down unrestrained to the big-seeded cornfields, to the small-seeded pasture fields, to the whole of the material world. 30. And the bright and glorious Tisturia goes back down to the sea, Vaurukasha, in the shape of a white beautiful horse, with golden ears and a golden caparison. 31. He makes the sea boil up and down, he makes the sea stream this and that way, he makes the sea flow this and that way. All the shores of the sea, Vaurukasha, are boiling over. All the middle of it is boiling over. 32. And the bright and glorious Tisturia rises up from the sea, Vaurukasha. O Ospitima Zarathustra, the bright and glorious Satavasa, rises up from the sea, Vaurukasha, and vapors rise up from Mount Hindu that stands in the middle of the sea, Vaurukasha. 33. And the vapors push forward in the regular shape of the clouds. They Go, following the wind, along the ways which the Ha'ama traverses, and the increaser of the world. Behind him travels the mighty wind made by Mazda, the rain and the cloud, and the sleet, down the several places, to the fields, down to the 7 Karshvaras of the earth. 34. Apamnapat, Ospitama Zarathustra, divides the waters amongst the countries in the material world, in the company with the mighty wind, the glory made by the waters, the Pravashis of the faithful. For his brightness and glory, I will offer him a sacrifice worth being heard. Now it's interesting that Sirius doesn't do this thing through the year and the procession of equinoxes. It doesn't do this thing where we, its time moves, like a degree every 72 years or something. It doesn't do that. But 34. Apamnapat Ospitama Zarathustra divides the waters amongst the countries in the material world, the company of the great wind, the glory made by the waters, and the Frashis, guardian spirits, is the general understanding of the faithful. For his brightness and glory, I'll offer him a sacrifice worth being heard. Then the vapors push forward in the regular shape of clouds. Well, there's interesting movement with Sirius. And it goes following the wind along the ways which the Ha'ama. The Hama is, to remind you, the you mash up marijuana, it's juice. You got ephedra juice with it. You got opium sap with it. You may have mushrooms and a bunch of other stuff with it, but there's a base of those 3 things. The increaser of the world, behind travels the mighty wind made by Mazda. So see, this is all, the power of all these things is supposed to be by God. These things aren't said to have their independent power or choice. They're, innocent, just like the light beings in other mythologies, the unfallen angels, as you could say. And the rain and the cloud and the sleet, down to the several places, down to the fields, down to the 7 Karshvaras of the earth, the continents. 7 compromises 35 alone. We sacrifice unto Tisturia, the bright and glorious star, who from the shining east moves along his wide winding course, along the path made by the entities, along the way appointed for him by the watery way, at the will of Ahura Mazda, at the will of the Ameshaspentas. For his brightness and glory, I will offer him a sacrifice worth being heard, and so on. 8. 36. We sacrifice unto Tisturia, the bright and glorious star, whose rising is watched by men, who live on the fruits of the year, by the chiefs of the deep understanding, by the wild beasts of the mountain, by the tame beasts that run in the plains. They watch him as he comes up to the country for a bad year or for a good year, thinking in themselves, how shall the Aryan countries be fertile? For his brightness and glory, I offer him a sacrifice worth being heard, and so on. 9 compromises 37 and 38. 37. We sacrifice unto Tisturia, the bright and glorious star, swift-flying and swift-moving, who flies towards the sea of Odokasha as swiftly as the arrow darted through the heavenly space, which Eraksha, the swift archer, the Arya amongst the Aryas, whose arrow was the swiftest, shot from Mount Ksha'apa to Mount Havanvant. 38. Ahura Mazda gave him assistance, and the Ameshaspentas and Mithra, the Lord of the wide pastures, pointed him the way. Behind him went the tall Ashis, Vanguhe, and Parende. On a light chariot, always still, in his course he reached Mount Havanvant on the shining waters. For his brightness and glory, I will offer him a sacrifice worth being heard. Now, Sirius has some, lesser Siriuses. So the mythology of a few Sirius A, B, and C is interesting that you find that sort of thing, because, that system. 10 compromises 39 and 40. 39. We sacrifice unto Tisturia, the bright and glorious star, who affects the Ivrikas, It destroys the Pa'erikas, the Engra Nyayis flung to stop all the stars that have in them the seed of the waters. 40. Tir afflicts them. He blows them away from the sea of Urukasha, and the wind blows the clouds forward, bearing the waters of fertility, so that the friendly showers spread wide over. They spread helpingly and friendly over the 7 Karshvaras. For his brightness and glory, I will offer him a sacrifice worth being heard. 11. Compromises 41 and 42. 41. We sacrifice unto Tir, the bright and glorious star, for whom long the standing waters and the running spring waters, the stream waters, and the rain waters. 42. When will the bright and glorious Tir rise up for us? When will the springs, with a flow and overflow of waters thick as a horse's shoulder, run to the beautiful places and fields, and to the pastures, even to the roots of the plants, that they may grow with powerful growth? For his brightness and glory, I will offer him a sacrifice worth being heard. 12. 43. Only. We strive unto Tir, the bright and glorious star, who washes away all things of fear, stunts the growth of all, and brings health to all those creations, being most beneficent. When he has been worshipped with the sacrifice and propitiated, rejoice and satisfied. For his brightness and glory, I will offer him a sacrifice worth being heard. 13. 44 through 47. 44. I will sacrifice unto Tir, the bright and glorious star, whom Ahura Mazda has established as the Lord and overseer above all stars, in the same way as he has established Zarathustra above men, whom neither Engra Ma'inu, nor the Yasts, and the Pa'erikas, nor the men Yasts can deliver unto death, nor can all the Avas together prevail for his death. For his brightness and glory, I will offer him a sacrifice worth being heard, and so on. 45. We sacrifice unto Tir, the bright and glorious star, to whom Ahura Mazda has given 1,000 senses, and who is the most beneficent amongst the stars that have in them the seed of the waters. 46. Who moves in light with the stars that have in them the seed of the waters? He from the sea of Urukasha, the powerful sea, the large-sized deep, the salt of the waters, goes to all the lakes, and to all the beautiful caves, and to all the beautiful channels, in the shape of a white beautiful horse, with golden ears and a golden caparison. 47. Then, O Spitama Zarathustra, the waters flow down from the sea of Urukasha, mother-like, friendly, and healing. He divides them amongst these countries, being most beneficent, when he has been worshipped with a sacrifice and propitiated, rejoiced, and satisfied. For his brightness and glory, I will offer him a sacrifice worth being heard, and so on. Part 15 is only verse 48. We sacrifice unto Tir, the bright and glorious star, for whom long all the creatures of Smita Inu, those that live under the ground, and those that live above the ground, those that live in the waters, and those that live on dry land, those that fly, and those that run in the plains, and all those that live within this boundless and endless world of the Holy Spirit. For his brightness and glory, I will offer him a sacrifice worth being heard. Part 16 compromises 49 to 62. 49. We sacrifice unto Tir, bright and glorious star, the healthful, the wise, the happy, and powerful, who is the Lord of 1,000 boons, and grants many boons to that man who has pleased him, whether begging or not begging for them. 50. I, O Spitama Zarathustra, have created that star, Tir, as worthy of sacrifice, as worthy of prayer, as worthy of propitiation, as worthy of glorification as myself, Ahura Mazda. 51. In order to withstand, to break asunder, to afflict, to drive back the malice of that Pa'erika Duz-ya-irya, whom evil-speaking people call Hu-ya-irya. 52. I have not created that star, Tir, as worthy of sacrifice, as worthy of prayer, as worthy of propitiation, as worthy of glorification as myself, Ahura Mazda. 53. In order to withstand, to break asunder, to afflict, to drive back the malice of that Pa'erika Duz-ya-irya, whom evil-speaking people call Hu-ya-irya. 54. Then all day long, all night long, that Pa'erika Duz-ya-irya would wage war against the material world of mine, wanting to extinguish its life, and she goes on rushing upon and rushing around it. 55. But the bright and glorious star Tir keeps that Pa'erika and bounds with twofold bounds, but threefold bounds that cannot be overcome, with bounds all over the body, as it is that were 1,000 men keeping one man, and bonds 1,000 men of those that are strongest in strength. 56. If the Aryan countries Ospitima Zarathustra would perform in honor of the bright and glorious Tistoria, the due sacrifice, the invocation, just as that sacrifice and invocation ought to be performed in the perfection of holiness, never should a hostile horde enter those Aryan countries, nor any plague, nor leprosy, nor venomous plants, nor the chariot of a foe, nor the uplifted spear of a foe. 57. Zarathustra asks, what is, then, O Hermas, the sacrifice and invocation in honor of the bright and glorious Tistoria, as it ought to be performed in the perfection of holiness? 58. Hermas answered, let the Aryan nations bring libations unto him, let the Aryan nations tie bundles of barisma for him, let the Aryan nations cook for him the head of a cattle, either white or black or of any other color, but all of one and the same color. 59. Let not a murderer take off these offerings, nor a whore, nor a who does not sing the gathas, who spreads death in the world and withstands the law of Mazda, the law of Zarathustra. 60. If the murderer takes of these offerings, or a whore, or a who does not sing the gathas and spreads death in the world and withstands the law of Mazda, the law of Zarathustra, then the bright and glorious Tistoria takes back his healing virtues. 61. Plagues will ever pour upon the Aryan nations. Hostile hordes will ever fall upon the Aryan nations. The Aryans will be smitten by their 50s and their 100s, by their 100s and their thousands, by their thousands and their tens of thousands, by their tens of thousands and their myriad of myriads. 62. Yata ahu va'erio, the will of the Lord is the law of holiness, and so on. I bless the sacrifice and prayer, and the strength and vigor of Tistoria, the bright and glorious star, and the powerful Sata va'esa, made by Mazda, who pushes the waters forward. Hashem Vahu, holiness is the best of all good, and so on. Give unto that man brightness and glory. Give him the bright, all-happy, blissful abode of the holy ones. I didn't think I'd finish that in one video, but I am not going to finish the commentary. I know that. I know that much. Tistoria is thought to give gifts of the rain, and have a disguise as a horse snorting. And you know, it's Nama. It's powerful and highly, as verse 4 says. And the upon the pot, the reference here, are through whom the beauty of the water comes from Bereza, and their seed from upon the pot. Bereza, the high, the tall, an epithet of upon the pot, became one of his names. And we see as time goes on certain things taking in names of different things. For the long regarding in verse 5, we have pa itis marente, and further on in that verse, the hope, the better in their looking.